guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today is our full review of the Flanker W606-5 from Huajun Toys. So I got this in courtesy directly from the company, and I've been doing a bunch of flying with it. Check my channel, I got lots of videos on this and a few more to come yet, because we do still have to do an aggressive flying video. Yes, I love doing that stuff. Anyway, so this thing is going to come pretty much assembled. Just got to throw on your landing gear and your camera. Throw the FPV screen mount onto your radio and your screen, and away you go. And of course, you got to charge batteries, right? Now, I do know for a fact that GearBest is selling this quad right now, and they are only providing one battery. I did get two batteries with mine, probably because I got it directly from the company for testing, and that's just the way it goes. So you're probably only going to just get one battery. Now the manual is quite clear in everything. Now this quad does have a range of 300 to 500 meters, and according to GearBest's site, because it's not listed in here, the FPV apparently has 100 meters or more. I have some further testing to do on that one to see how that works for the FPV side of things. But very good clear screen. I do have a video up with some FPV, and I went into the sunlight and I got lines across my screen. That's because the sun is blinding the camera, because when I got away from the sun directly, from the camera's view, everything was fine. So yeah, if you fly directly into the sun, expect some lines on your video. But anyways, so all the features of the radio and the quad do seem to work really well, with of course the exception of auto return is not GPS controlled, and of course neither is the rest of it. But being that it's not GPS controlled on the auto return, it's kind of like the rest of those auto return type features we've seen on quads. They kind of sort of work, but it's probably more doable on headless mode. I will be practicing more with headless and the auto return with it to see if maybe it works best that way. But in the meantime, all the rest of the features do work. I did not even attempt yet, by the way, the Propeller Shutdown feature, which is also emergency landing, because what that does, as soon as you hit that button, everything stops and it drops like a stone. It's only for emergency, so I did want to show that. And because it's like, if you're coming too close to a building or a tree and you're afraid you're going to get stuck in a tree, hit the emergency shutdown, drop the quad. As long as everything's good, you might not break anything, but who knows? It is for an emergency, and it will save you from having to play fetch for the quad up in probably a very tall tree. Okay, even I've gotten quads stuck in trees before, and I've had to actually cut the trees down. But anyways, the camera is adjustable for up and down only. It's a fixed mount, it's not a gimbal, but you can adjust it from the control knob on the radio. Okay, and it's servo controlled, so you can get many different angle viewpoints on this thing, which is really nice. This is your auto return switch, so leave it up to not use it, bring it down to use it if you want to, and you can actually do assisted auto return, which I think that's more what it is, I guess. But the only way you get out of it is to turn it off manually. This button here, push once fast for pictures, push and hold for 2 beeps, turns the video recording on. Again, push and hold, turns the video recording off. It'll show you on screen what it's doing. This button here is for flipping. The quad does flip. However, when you do an auto takeoff or you're in altitude hold, because auto takeoff puts you into altitude hold, so when you're in either one of those, your quad will not flip. Okay, it can't flip, and that's fine. That's actually a pretty good safety feature. But otherwise, yep, when you're not doing that and you're flying normal, you can flip this thing, and it flips nice. I have a night video. I did some flipping with it, and it worked really well, and flips quite nicely, really. Standard trim controls for front, forward, and reverse, as well as your side-to-side or banking. You also have trim for your yaw rate, or not for your rate, sorry, but for your yaw. This button, when you're not in altitude hold, is turning your lights on and off, and this one, of course, pushing down, is for your different speeds. Okay, and you've got 2 speed controls on this. Emergency shutdown, auto takeoff, auto landing, headless mode, and altitude hold. Okay, so those are your basic features of your radio. Now I do have a video explaining the entire radio as well as the screen, so I'm not going to get into that on this video, so you can check those ones out. And you can get quite the nice angle too, and still have plenty of slack in your cable. for your FPV. So there you go. Now you can also more than likely hook goggles into this because it is 5.8 gigahertz. You can hook goggles in, and I'm going to get a set of goggles because I am going to be getting into racing quads and I'd like to learn the FPV, and this is actually a nice docile flyer too, to learn the FPV with goggles, and also I can fly aggressively with this too in the second rates, and this thing can actually get up and boogie quite nicely. Flight time is rated for around 8 to 10 minutes, and it's fairly accurate, and that flight time for maximum range area of that flight time is going to be more on the warmer weather side. When it gets colder outside, you are going to get some reduced flight time out of this thing because everything is working so much more, and of course, you know, cold weather, cold wind, cold everything, yeah, it's got to work a little harder, so you will lose probably 2 or 3 minutes of flight time. You know, I got about an easy 6 minutes the other day, and it was a little on the nippy side out there, and so yeah, it will reduce you a little bit. Now the battery is a 2-cell 2500 milliamp battery, and just so that you're aware, no, you cannot run a 3-cell battery in this quadcopter, nor can you run it in the 606-3 YouFly Lily Clone. Okay. You do get some spare parts for this thing, obviously. You get some spare blades, you get a screwdriver, you get a baggie of screws that are labeled what they're for, because you got to assemble your landing gear and your camera. You also get 2 spare caps, which is nice in case you lose a cap. These caps do not rotate, okay? They're just there for decoration and for probably part of holding these in a little bit better, so your pin doesn't fly out on you accidentally while you're flying, because it does kind of look like hell without that cover. So yeah, keep your covers on, and they just press fit, but I would suggest turning and pulling at the same time, and then when you're going to put it back on, push down and turn at the same time as if you're threading it, even though there's no threads, until it's all the way down and secure. The gear mesh is really good on this thing. Although this quad does exhibit some noise, it is not quite as noisy as my JJR CH26, but it's still got some noise to it. It is brushed motors after all, so they will give a little bit more noise over what a brushless system does. Now, the camera, from what I understand, is a 1 megapixel 720p high definition. And that's actually not too bad, you know, nice upgrade, you know, down the line. Maybe they'll do a 5 megapixel 1080p, who knows. I have no idea what they have planned for this quad in future, but it is not a bad picture, really, and it does take really decent photos. You know, as long as you're stable, you know, and then you go click, take your picture. Flying and cutting video, it's pretty decent. It does have jello, though. Because even with the servo, when it's powered up, servos always lock up tighter. There's still a little bit of play here, and there's got to be a way to figure out how to get that out of the way. Now, I did try a thin piece of foam in the narrower side of the bracket here to try and stiffen it up, and that didn't go well. It was actually too stiff. You know, so it's like, oh darn, we got to figure out a way to stiffen this up a little bit more for less jello. The only other option at this point would be to not use this camera and just, you know, throw your Mobius on here or something, different camera. But with the built-in camera, it does pretty decent. And at least if it's not windy outside, like basically maybe a half a kilometer, 1 kilometer/hour wind, and you're stationary and you're just trying to slowly move and do aerial footage, you should probably see very little jello effect at all. But when you're more aggressive, yes, you will see more jello happen. So that's something, you know, that they need to figure out is how to get rid of that jello, and I'm going to try and think of some ideas too. Landing gear is a weak point on this, at least with the factory screws, and my sponsor there at Huajun Toys had let me in on the fact that somebody packed the wrong landing gear screws, and he shot me a picture of what I should have had, which I didn't. But either way, anybody who has either way gotten proper landing screws probably has still had that same problem with, you know, popping a leg in a crash. I'm using some pretty meaty screws, and I have a video on this, okay? And I even had a light crash today when I was doing the demo video for auto takeoff, auto landing, and it didn't even budge my screws. So the screws I'm using are actually really super secure. but I still find there's a weak point with the landing gear because it's still too flexible. I would like to see a cross member piece as an addition from the left and rights, front and back. The sides I'm not too concerned with, that's fine. It's the front, it's the left and rights, because when you come down, you're usually coming down like this, and that's where you want the most strength in your landing gear so you don't pop it off or do damage to anything, you know. And I actually damaged my screw holes so bad that the screws wouldn't thread back in properly. So either way, I was upgrading my screws, and my upgraded screws are working great. Anyways, you got 9.5-inch props on this puppy too, and there's really very little clearance on the sides. When you're looking at this, there's about maybe 1/4 of an inch, and here from left to right you've got around an inch at the back side, and just probably a little over an inch here at the front. So there's really not a lot of clearance, and if you even them right up, it's about an inch. So yeah, any bigger of prop and yeah, this thing wouldn't fly. So they picked right with their prop lengths, and it does push a lot of wind too, you know. But it is a very smooth flyer, and the lighting on this thing is really nice at night. I've had no problems flying it. I did have a little bit of an issue seeing the red lights, but of course I wear glasses as it is, and you know, from a distance and really high up, the red lights are a little harder to see for me. But the green, yeah, they're like eye-popping, piercing, you know, so they're really bright. So for me, I know I'm going to eventually change my red lights out, which is my fronts, for white lights, because number one, it'll give me a bit of a headlight effect, and number two, I'm definitely going to know where my front end is for sure, because it'll be white piercing at me, you know what I mean? And I really like the blue scheme as well, all the way around with the LEDs. That's really nice. So, and this lights up in like a red up top, and that's actually kind of cool too. I really like that. With the battery compartment, it's a really nice heavy duty plate. You don't even have to use a lockdown screw, which is nice. I really appreciate that. I hate those screws myself. But they do give you one if you want to use it. But I choose not to. I don't need it, so... also, I have a video on how to properly install this battery into the quad as well. There is a right way and a wrong way to do it. So I do show the right way on how to install it and be able to take it out very easily afterwards too, with still having that camera mounted there. The speed of the quad for yaw rate is not bad. It is an aerial drone, so it's not going to be very fast. And even in the second rates, I haven't really noticed that much of an extra speed, if there is any. I can't really tell. But as far as flying wise goes, it is a much quicker flyer in the second rates. The altitude hold does work really well. It does have a little tiny bit of deviation, but it's really not bad. It's pretty decent, you know, it holds really well. The auto takeoff, auto landing does seem to work, but you do have to pre-trim out your quad first for it to work correctly. Emergency shutdown, I did not and will not show. That is for emergencies only, because what it does is it completely kills the juice to the quad, and it drops like a stone. And this thing's got some weight even without the battery. With the battery, it weighs up a little bit more. So yeah, it's going to drop. But that's only for an emergency. So if you're flying around, you know, and you're like, oh, I'm coming too close to a tree, what do I do? And if you can't back up quick enough, maybe you're into a bit of a wind, right? Just reach down, let go of the throttle, reach down, click that button, boom. And you're not going to get stuck in a tree. And hopefully you're not going to do any damage to your quad either, depending on which way it lands, but you know, you might do if anything, you're probably going to do some harm to your landing gear, and hopefully you don't harm your camera. I had one accident on my maiden flight with this, and I got lucky. I did not damage my camera, because I was like, oh my god, you know, and I got lucky. So it was like, you know, but it's a very nice radio too. The radio not only has some good weight to it, it has really nice quality sticks. And these silver sticks, by the way, they just unscrew, and they are metal, you know, and that's nice. And your shaft in here is also metal, of course. And so you do have some nice hobby grade sticks, and they're nice and tall too. So if you like to fly with the pinched thing, You can do that really well, or I like the thumbs, you know, because it gives me maximum traction up here, and I have better control this way, you know, but that's just me. Standard trims, left and right for banking, forward, backward, left and right trim for your yaw, as well as this switch here. It becomes like a throttle trim when you're either in auto takeoff or you're in altitude hold. And when you go into auto takeoff, you are in the altitude hold. So you'll have to hit the altitude hold button to get out of that and then fly normal. When you are in the hold, it is up and down for trimming for your height. When you're not in hold, up is turning your lights on and off, and down is your speed selector. Okay, so if you want to fly faster right away and then go into hold, first get into your second rates, and then hit altitude hold, and then you're going to be flying faster at your altitude hold. And then you just use this to trim your height if you need more height. You know, just boom, 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 and gain some height, and away you go. Now, one thing, too, is when you are in hold, you'll notice that when you're going forward, especially at a steep pitch, even in the regular docile flying mode, you will have a bit of a dive and you will lose a bit of height. But the height will return itself when you're not doing that. So when you're trying to go back stationary again, it will decide that it's going to recover its height again. But you will see a bit of a dive and deviation in your height when you're going forward. That's kind of a normal thing on these. And it's pretty much normal on a lot of quads that I've been watching actually in the last couple days that are even GPS controlled. They tend to have that dive to them too. You know, but I mean, I think the only ones that don't do it are probably the really super expensive ones. They probably don't have that dive effect, or if they do, it's so minimal, it's crazy, and it self-corrects as you're flying. But this one here, yes, it will do the dive, so just be aware of that. And of course, your auto return is also, it's not GPS controlled. Like, none of this is GPS controlled, right? So with your auto return, it kind of works the same as the other ones. It works, but it kind of doesn't work the same way it's supposed to. But I think that's position of your quad versus returning. The thing is, with auto return, the way it should work is no matter what position you're in, if you need to get back, it should just come back. But that only happens with GPS controlled ones, where it'll just straighten out and come right back. And usually those ones will actually land too, right from where they took off. So you're not going to get that. So you may have to do a little bit of assistance with the sticks in the auto return once you figure out which way that auto return is heading. You know, it may be that it works best in headless mode too. I still have more practice on headless, and I'll work on the headless mode flying skills there for you guys and see if auto return works best with headless mode. Maybe it does, you know, but regular flying mode, that's how it's been working. All in all, though, it is a great quad. I am getting good battery life, by the way. This thing uses 6 AA batteries for the radio, because it also has to power the screen. And I'm getting amazing battery life out of, I'm using batteries from the source called Infinity Cells. And I really like those batteries. But I mean, you can run Duracell Energizers, you know, if you want to. But they're doing really well for battery life, considering you got an FPV screen going too. Now, the other thing I want to mention too while we're here is with the camera for recording. The card, you do get a 4 GB card with it. You could go larger. I don't know where it maxes at, but you know, experiment. But the card must be in the camera to record video. You can put the card into the screen, but all that's for is for viewing your pictures on screen, viewing your videos on screen if you want to review them, as well as formatting that card too, because it has its own formatting routine. Now, all your files are saved in an AVI format too, which is fine for PC users and just fine for us Mac people. Every time I fire up one of the AVIs off this, QuickTime converts it, fires it up, I'm fine, no big deal. And then I shove her into my movie program, or I can go into whatever movie program I have that'll read AVI direct, and away I go. So editing and then uploading later, not a big deal. Okay, so that's all right. What else can I tell you about this thing? It's, all in all, it is a really nice quad. I'm pretty impressed with it, and I'm pretty impressed that the features that they have actually do work as advertised, with the exception, like I said, of auto return is something that's a funky thing. And I did not do emergency shutdown just because I'm not going to show that feature. and I'm not going to purposely try and go towards a wall or a tree just to use it and say, hey, look, it does work. I'm more than confident it works. I've never had a quad with an emergency shutdown. I always just, oh, I'm getting too close, boom, and I hit my stick down. I kill the throttle. I mean, I've been trying to teach everybody on YouTube that for a number of years, that, you know, when you think you're about to crash, even flying in the house, just kill that throttle and you'll save damage to your machine, etc. Right? So, just, I drop the throttle. I'm probably never going to use that emergency shutdown myself. Okay, but it is there in case you want to use it. You know, you might have to. You never know. But the big trick is never panic anyways, right? So, I would say that this quad for me, I would set this at 4 out of 5 for sure. Good solid 4 out of 5. Nothing's perfect, we know that. Landing gear, it needs a little bit of stability work there and better screws for the landing gear. If they do the stability thing, you'll probably be alright with the factory screws, but definitely got to do something with that landing gear. I have some suggestions on one of my videos on what you can do as a temporary fix until they do something, if they do anything for the landing gear. Hopefully they do a stabilization system, but it has to be set up really low and a bar going across this way. Okay, and you will have an interference point with the camera, but just, you know, fly around that point and you'll be fine, and you won't see the bar in the view of the camera at all. But one in the front, of course, one in the back, and that should stabilize it and give the landing gear much more strength, which is also going to save your camera too in a crash, because when you have a strong landing gear, it's not going to pop off, and it's going to save your camera. Okay, because I did see two channels that I do watch all the time, and they were reviewing this, and they had some camera problem after a crash. It wasn't cool. Now, right now, GearBest sells this thing for $155. I believe I mentioned that. I think that's really a good price. Now that's Canadian dollars, and about $6 shipping. I think that's a pretty good price for this quad and for what you're getting. You know, I've seen quads around this price range that don't have half the bells and whistles, and you know, so that's actually pretty decent. You know, I think that's good. Other than that, guys, I think this pretty much about wraps it up for review. I still have some range testing that I want to do with this thing to see what the FPV range is like. I may push this thing to the limits for height, but I won't be doing that during the winter months. The colder it gets outside and the higher you go, the colder it gets, reduces flight time, and I don't really feel like going up, you know, 1,000 feet in the air, and then I've got, like, you know, 10 seconds to get back to planet Earth, because, yeah, this thing will drop like a stone, and I don't really want to see it splattered in a million pieces. So we'll save that sort of thing for the summer months, because you will see that noticeable drop in run time in the colder weather that you're flying this in. And I don't see a problem with flying this in colder weather, you know. Just be aware you will have a couple of minutes less run time than what you normally have in warm weather, and that's because everything's got to work that much harder to stay moving right, so it does draw a little bit more power that way. But otherwise, I think we're pretty much done there. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you know, feel free to ask, leave your comments. If you're not subbed already, please subscribe, and you'll always get updates to my videos for RC and all kinds of crazy stuff I do on my channel. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again for watching.